If the city of Los Angeles should receive the minutest germs of the dreaded Asiatic cholera, now in China and the islands of the Pacific, what a terrible efficient aid in the work of spreading the scourge would be rendered by that foul hotbed of a stench-enviced Chinatown. Supplemented by a sewerage system which would be discreditable even to a town one-third its size, the outlook in case of such a visitation is indeed appalling. It is said that cleanliness is next to godliness. If such be the case, the City of Angels is a moral stench that is well nigh unbearable. Public sentiment has at last become thoroughly aroused to the imperative demand for two things: the demolition of Chinatown and the inauguration of a sewerage system based on sanitary principles and commensurate with the future importance of Los Angeles as the metropolis of Southern California.
Call it a high-tech digital makeover. The city of Los Angeles is looking to change its image from this to something more like this. And since the core of LA's infrastructure dates all the way back to the 1800s, it's in dire need of high-tech problem solving.
We want to send small robots in to clear the drains, to inspect, and to look so that we don't have big city workers stepping on fragile pipes from the inside.
Fixing LA's public infrastructure involves more than technological innovation, but an investigation into who infrastructure regularly fails and why. Infrastructure determines a city's socio-economic landscape and spatial environment, reflecting the ideologies of those who built it. Today, Los Angeles' socioeconomic stratification is glaringly visible. In its unequal distribution, LA's public infrastructure provides tangible evidence for who a city considers its public and who it casts to the margins. How do sewers play a role? Much of what's above the ground today was decided by what was below the ground yesterday. In 1781, a group of Mexican, Spanish, and indigenous settlers founded Los Angeles and in less than 2 months had built the city's first all-purpose and communal open water ditch called Zanja Madre. For a little over a century, residents of the pueblo used a network of zanjas for irrigation, laundry, bathing, and waste. Following Mexican customs of communal rights, all citizens of the community could use the zanjas freely. Their only stipulation was that nobody could use the water in a way that restricted anybody else's use. After the U.S. annexed California as part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, the zanjas and its guiding communal principles gave way to the ideologies of an increasingly Anglo-American population. With the election of Mayor Toberman in 1872, Anglo-Americans took over the city council and quickly began working on an agenda to incentivize residential and commercial growth. Toberman ran on a pro-growth and anti-Mexican campaign. By 1873, the city began a municipalization of LA's water services, including the sewers. The city began converting open-ditch zanjas to underground pipes, except those in Sonoratown and Chinatown, both adjacent to the former cultural center of LA, the Plaza. Additionally, city officials criminalized the unauthorized use of the remaining zanjas. From here on out, individuals had to pay either a government or private entity for their sewerage and water services. Despite the city enacting laws against using zanjas, it did not provide Sonoratown or Chinatown with adequate alternatives. One of the new mainline sewers had an unfinished open end that gushed raw sewage near their old plaza. In 1879, Health Officer Walter Lindley assessed the city's public health and noted Chinatown as a rotten spot. During this early construction that lasted into the 1880s, LA sewers were generally not built to high standards, and the complaints about a citywide smell dominated the LA Times. A visitor in 1882 wrote to the editor of the LA Times, "But one says, what is there to be done if we cannot arouse the proper authorities to give us good sewerage? It is our duty to keep others from suffering, so we advise our friends to go where the health of the people is made a consideration." Even though sewage stench permeated throughout LA, only non-white enclaves became characterized by the smell. A major population boom in the late 1880s necessitated the construction of a citywide sewer system. which the city constructed in 1890. Still, the city denied sewerage infrastructure to the Mexican American and Chinese communities. When the city declared sewage infrastructure was universally beneficial, it became clearer and clearer who belonged to the universal. Chinatown did not receive sewers until 1909. Rhetoric of Chinese and Mexican American communities as nuisances to public health and innately dirty and diseased grew in conjunction with an absence of sewerage infrastructure. This rhetoric pathologized Chinese and Mexican Americans, giving pseudoscience backing to institutional racism and justifying future policies designed to eradicate these communities. The sewers of Los Angeles played a major role in defining the racial categories that shaped a city's political, social, and spatial environments.